Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 56 of Nostalgia Talk. I'm James. I'm back from my trip, and joining me it was a really fun trip, by the way. That was probably the best time I'd ever had in Montreal. I've been there many times, but this was so much fun. So thank you to my cousins for your hospitality. I really enjoyed being with you guys. I promise it won't take me 5 years to come and visit next time. But anyway, joining me for episode number 56 of Nostalgia Talk is Spencer Lott.
Hello. Hi, James. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
I am very well, very cold because it's minus 20 degrees in Nova Scotia, and I haven't left my house since yesterday afternoon. So,
Stay safe out there, man.
yeah, if my parents are listening to this, you guys are lucky being in Hawaii right now.
Anyone in Hawaii is lucky. You're right.
Exactly. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Spencer is a puppeteer with a lot of credits to his name. He's been on television, film, and even theater. He's done Sesame Street. He's done the Muppets. He's, as I said, a lot of theater work, and also the 2019 Tom Hanks film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And in addition to that, also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you designed some of the puppets for that. Am I right?
Yeah. We built all of those for the film. We recreated them from the originals from the TV show. Yeah, we did that.
Nice. So great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me for my first show back from vacation.
Well, welcome back. You're glad that you have a top tier celebrity guest such as myself to kick you off.
So let's begin with, how did you first become introduced into puppetry?
Oh man, I got the bug early,
Mm-hmm.
really early as a little kiddo. I've got a kindergarten paper that says I want to be the next Jim Henson. I got hooked on. I was late '80s, early '90s kid, and there were a ton of really good puppet shows on TV. Obviously Sesame Street was like a huge influence, and things like Eureka's Castle and Shining Time Station and Mister Rogers, like all of these like deep cuts and a variety of puppetry styles. And as soon as I found out that there was somebody beneath the puppet, that there was some kind of like magic trick, it was like behind the scenes, that's what I really fell in love with. And I've been super fortunate to get to pursue it and do it ever since.
Nice. So do you remember your very first ever professional puppeteering gig?
Oh, that's a good question. I started doing shows on my own around the community, right? I started doing stuff like at the foot of my parents' bed when I was young, and then graduated to like Boy Scouts and churches or babysitters or birthday parties would like have me come perform. My first like professional show that I recall, there was a company in Kansas City, Missouri called the Paul Messner Puppets, and they were really good at bringing in young puppeteers, kids in the community who had the puppet bug. They would give them a chance, and I think there was like it was like a like some kind of a holiday review show, and I got hired to be one of the puppets and puppeteers, and this was like traditional rod puppet style. So the puppets were anywhere from like 18 inches to a couple feet big on oak dowel rods. So Paul was teaching me like that style of puppetry, and we were doing this holiday show live with a symphony. There was some kind of like orchestra symphony that was playing like holiday songs, and we kind of act them out. There's a Santa puppet and reindeer and snowman and stuff like that. And I remember it because it was my very first show, and I screwed up. We were like doing these jumping reindeer off of this roof during this kind of like musical cue, and I had my reindeer above my head, and I jumped off the roof and I whipped it straight into the backdrop, into this like starry backdrop, and the antlers got tangled in the backdrop, and I just like panicked and just stood there, and the reindeer was like swimming in it, and Paul was like, bring it down, take it down. And so it was just into the fire, trial by fire. You want to be a professional a performer, you have to be able to improvise and go with it. So it was but it didn't deter me. I was traumatized, but not too much apparently, because I kept going back. So that was probably my first professional show. And then I was also acting, and so I got to do a community theater piece. I got to actually skip school when I was in third grade and go be in this kind of daytime play in my community with professional actors, and that
Nice.
was a blast. And that was the first time I was like, oh wait a minute, I'm getting paid to skip school and to act, and that was
I won't
pretty
say why,
appealing.
but I won't say why, but I wish that somebody paid me to skip third grade.
Yep. So I lucked out. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. That's it's interesting that your first piece you messed up, but I have a feeling like that's how a lot of the greats always start. I've always heard Carol Spinney say that that's how Jim Henson discovered him, from messing up, and then Jim's like, you know what? I liked what you were trying to do.
I know, it's such a good story, right? The
Mm.
and any artist knows that there's, you can tell the thought behind it, the artistry, the dramaturgy, the technique, like those things ring true even even in a disaster. So yeah, totally.
So how did you get involved in Sesame Street?
So let's see. I was obsessed, and just never stopped, watching it. I would watch it all day long, um, through all, over decades. And I was doing a lot of. I have amazing parents and I had amazing teachers who supported me and encouraged me and found like professional development opportunities for me. And I had gotten connected with some puppeteers at the Puppeteers of America festival, the P of A. I was at a like a national festival or something like that, and somebody told me about the O'Neill Puppetry Conference in Waterford, Connecticut. They do kind of a 2 week long professional development workshop. It's one of the few kind of in-depth training opportunities in the country. And I applied. So I think I was 16, and I put together a resume and went to a neighbor. I had a friend's father shoot. He was a professional photographer, and he shot some portfolio pics of me and my puppets, and I like photoshopped them together, and I sent it off to apply, and I got accepted. And so I was 17, and I don't remember how I got there. I think my dad and I either flew or drove, or maybe flew to New York and then drove to Connecticut to get there. And he dropped me off, and I was there for 2 weeks, and that was the very first time where I started to meet Muppet performers and really get to like spend time with them. I was in Marty Robinson's track. He was working on a play. It was a collaboration with him and Annie Evans, his lovely partner. And it was a workshop of a show called Pigeonholed that was all about like kind of the behind the scenes of a children's television show, very inspired by his everyday life. And I fell in there, and I got I was in the show, and I was playing this great character named Junk Dude with this beautiful puppet made out of all these like recycled trash objects. And Marty and Pam and the other Muppet performers who were there at the conference, and Leslie, they scooped me up. They just like I came in kind of like very young and energetic, and they're like, who is this kid from Kansas? He clearly wants to be here, but what is, what's his deal? And Marty was amazing, and he took me aside after a couple days into the conference. It was like, you've got pretty good chops. How's your monitor work? And I was like, what's a monitor? And he was like, oh dear, if you want to do this on TV. I was like, yeah, of course, that's the dream. And he was like, well, then you need to get good at working with a monitor. And I had watched so many episodes and seen behind the scenes documentaries and read so many, the basically I had the Jim Henson books out on permanent loan from the local library, but it had never connected in my mind that that's what they were doing, is that they were watching the monitor, and that the image was flipped and all that stuff. And so Marty, we would, so for the rest of the conference, Marty and I would skip the second half of dinner, and he set up a camera and a monitor in the barn theater, and we would just practice. We would just drill, and he threw me a pair of ping pong ball eyes and said, "Okay, well, you should start learning how to do this and get good at it." And so Marty was there. Tim Lagasse would come in, Pam, Leslie. I mean, like all star, rock star ringers would swing by and offer tips and tricks and just like really kind of introduce that world and field of depth and the frame and how it works and how to cheat and your body position and like all the parts that make TV puppetry happen. And so that was the first time. Like that was the first time I met any Muppet performers. And then I went home and I practiced every day for 2 years. Every single day, I set up my own. I got like a secondhand video camera. My family sold a video camera and a little kind of busted TV, and just practiced every single day, just for hours, just trying to figure out how this worked and how to get good at it.
Yeah, and the monitors are really fascinating too. Like when you're, I've puppeteered with a monitor many times. So like when you're holding that puppet up, and for one thing, of course, you want to focus on the way that it looks, but then you look at the monitor and it's like, okay, it looks good on camera. So so it's kind of like a mirror image almost.
That's exactly right. So when you move your puppet to the left, you move your wrist left on the monitor, it looks right. It's a flip.
Yeah, that took me a
when
long time to get used to.
Yeah, so when you combine that with the lack of depth, it is a whole new way of seeing. And it takes time. It took me a decade before I was like really comfortable and could just pick up and be like, oh yeah, I know where I am in frame and I can find my spot. Like it's a lot of brain power that is dedicated to just that one technical aspect. So I worked really hard on that and stayed in touch with Marty and Pam, and I would send them updates. I just write them emails and be like, hey, I'm doing plays in high school. Hey, I'm taking improv. Hey, I'm doing stuff. And they were always incredibly encouraging and supportive. And then my first ever kind of like hands-on experience with Sesame Street was in 2006. They did a big puppeteer training workshop. And they hadn't done, to my knowledge, they hadn't done one in a long time. They talk about like the glory days of when they would do them all the time. And Jane was there and they were training people up or doing big cattle calls. This was the first one in a long time. It was run by Kevin, Marty, and Joey was there. And there were, to my knowledge, there were around 50 of us from all over the United States and Canada. And I skipped my first week of classes my freshman year at college to go to New York for the first time because it was at Kaufman. This workshop was where they shoot Sesame Street, the Kaufman Astoria Studios. So I skipped my classes. I wrote my email. I wrote my professors and said, I am enrolled in your class. I'm just going to be gone for the first week. I'm going to Sesame Street and I won't miss it. And so I went up and I stayed, with my friend's grandparents in Jersey, and I went in every day, and it was amazing. It was intense. They made cuts every day. So at the end of the day, and it was like the stories you've heard of. Basically, you stand in a giant line, and then you walk on camera, and you're like, hi, my name is Spencer. I'm a kid from Kansas. I came from over here, and I'm going over there, which is like a kind of a training thing to show that you know where focus is and that you can enter and leave frame at the right spot. And everybody in the room would do it once, and then they'd set a new goal, and we'd all do that once. Ryan Dillon was there. Ryan was the youngest person there. I was the second youngest. The two of us were like the kids in the room. And then at the end of at the end of the day, every day they'd cut people. So Kevin would sit down with his list and he'd be like, all right, if you hear your name, I want to see you again tomorrow. And he would read off the names, and you'd sit there and you'd be like, oh my gosh, are they gonna say my name or not? And
I can just imagine how nerve-wracking that
oh
is.
yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was like a reality TV show. And I made it. I kept making it. I made it through Monday. I made it through Tuesday. I made it through Wednesday. And then I finally got cut on Thursday. And there was one more day. That was the Friday. And so but I made it to Thursday, and I was, 18 years old. And that was a huge moment. That was a huge spark for me to like look around and only be 18, to be like, okay, I think I can do this. There's a lot of crazy talented puppeteers in this room, and I'm keeping up. I'm like competing, and I'm at the place I need to be technically wise. My acting chops weren't there, my improv wasn't there. But technically I could definitely hold my own with everyone in the room. And so that was a huge confidence booster for me to be like, oh, as a kid from Kansas, not knowing if you're ever going to be good enough to even to be a professional puppeteer, let alone to do stuff with Muppets and Sesame, it was like, oh, I think I can do this. And so that was it. And then I didn't hear from Sesame. I just stayed in touch, and then I was in and around New York, and I was meeting other performers who were doing stuff in and out of Sesame. And so much of it is about being a lovely human being, and being a good actor, but also being good at email and follow up and showing up on time and being lovely to rehearse with, and just like being a lovely human being and a professional artist. That will get you very far. So I didn't hear from Sesame for like a decade, and then 2006 they had another workshop, and I got invited to that and showed up, and it went really well. And then in 2006 was that one. 2016, 2014, 2016 or something was that workshop. And then soon after that, I got my first offer. I was on the train. I'll never forget. I was on the F train in Brooklyn, going to my apartment, and I looked down at my phone, and an email pops up, and it's availability request at Sesame Street. And it was just this moment of, and I couldn't even open the email because I was just too overwhelmed. It's just the dream, it's just an absolute dream come true. And I didn't even need I didn't need a season contract, I didn't need a character, I didn't need anything. I just knew that I was good enough to be asked to be at Sesame Street, and that maybe I was going to be able to do one day as a Sesame Street puppeteer, and like, I'm done. I've made it. I can hang it all up and focus on something else. And so that was it. So then I started just doing what they call day playing, coming in as a right-hander. My very first job was right-handing for Marty, which was incredible and poetic and really sweet. And we were on a rooftop shooting on the top of the Sesame Workshop building with Kate McKinnon from
Oh,
Saturday Night
nice.
Live, which was amazing. So it's already like Sesame Street, boom. SNL, Kate McKinnon, boom. Like this job could not get any better. They fed us. They gave us sandwiches for lunch. Like, it was a good day. And we're doing this bit with Telly Monster, and he's holding a mic. He's like a nervous news reporter, and he's holding the mic.
Like the Monster on the Spot skits with Telly.
Yeah. Basically, it's like a riff on that. From Matt, it's like this branded content from Mashable, and they'd shoot back and forth. There's these really funny bits with John Oliver and Cookie Monster, and then they'd send it to Telly on the roof, and he's talking to Kate McKinnon, and I'm holding this micro, and it's a real microphone. It's it's like a metal microphone, and Marty is just like really hazing me, and he's like, okay, we're gonna start in my right hand. I'm gonna pass it to you. You have to pass it back to me. He's like putting me through my paces, and we do a take, and then Kate McKinnon's standing next to Telly, and we do a take, and the director comes over and goes, hey, Spence, that was great. Can you get the microphone closer to Kate's mouth? And I said, well, sure. He goes, because that's how we're recording her audio. This microphone is hot, and that's the only way that we can hear what she's saying. And I was like,
Oh,
what?
cheeky. Really? They snuck that in there really well then.
Why are we doing this? We don't have another microphone. So that was the deal. So when I watch back the video, you can see me like holding the microphone close to Kate McKinnon's face and making sure I try not to, hit her while trembling and quaking in my boots. And it's gone from there. And I started swinging in and doing stuff on the season and doing music videos and YouTube spots and live appearances and all kinds of fun stuff. And it's just been a dream. It's like such a lovely, the impact that show has had on so many of us and continues to have on young people, especially young people internationally, and people from underserved communities. Like it's profound, and it's a huge responsibility and a huge commitment, and it's worth it's so much bigger than any one of us. So it's the best. It's just the best job. Yeah.
So from doing like right hands for Telly and various other characters, I'm assuming, because that's how every puppeteer starts. But from doing right hands and background roles on various stuff for Sesame Street, eventually you got your own character finally, Samuel.
That's right. It was
just for any of the listeners who don't know which one Samuel is. So as many of you guys probably know, there now, like if you watch the show currently, there is a Muppet with autism, Julia, and recently, a couple of years ago, we were introduced to Julia's family, and Samuel would be Julia's brother. I do remember when the videos featuring Julia's family came out, like I recognized Peter as Daniel, the father, instantly, because Peter and I are very, very close friends. But there were a lot of puppet voices I couldn't recognize. I emailed Peter and I was like, hey, Peter, who else is doing those puppets? And he said, we're trying to give our newer puppeteers a turn, like Kathy Kim and Spencer Lott. And so I was like, that's really cool. How did you get Samuel?
It's really a dream. It's incredible. To have the opportunity to have a character is huge and so rare. There's so many talented people who go through the show who may not even get this chance. And to originate a character, to have something that starts with me is incredible. I'm very, very fortunate, kind of right place at the right time. So Julia has been so popular, and there's so much demand. Families and parents have so much demand for that, for this material, that they built out Julia's world. And Sam is her neurotypical older brother. He's 7 years old. He's a super nerd. He wears his pants too high. He plays the clarinet and the flute. And he has this kind of dual. He has a couple different responsibilities. He is, he's kind of a caregiver. I've gotten to do a ton of work with this population, with specifically young people with autism, through my theater work, and then also volunteering and teaching artist work. And so over the years, I've met so many versions of Sam, so many incredible siblings who don't always, when you've got someone, sometimes, obviously when you have someone in your family who's on the spectrum, it's every family's experience is different. Every person on the autism spectrum is an individual who has a totally different point of view. And so, when you've met one person with autism, you've just met one person with autism. But I have seen these siblings, the person with autism can sometimes get a lot of attention and demand a lot from their parents or from their caregivers. And so sometimes the sibling has to step into that role and be a caregiver. or share the attention with that sibling. And so to be able to give voice to those siblings who maybe don't always have a voice, or who have worked really hard to help support their sibling, it feels really important. So for any of these Sesame initiatives, the way that they do a lot of the casting now is, Sesame Workshop is a machine and has dozens and dozens, hundreds of very smart people who are working to craft everything that gets made. So they had already built out designed the puppet and were building the puppet, and knew that they were going to launch her family before any of the puppeteers get contacted. And then I was actually in the hotel room for a beautiful day in the neighborhood. On like days in between shooting, when I got the audition ask. They said, hey, this is a 7-year-old kid who's got a sister on the spectrum. And it's sometimes a role comes through and you're like, oh, I know this. I know what this point of view is like. I've met a lot of versions of this kid. And so I just did a vocal audition, recorded that, sent it in, and then they called us back for a callback, where they give you a totally different puppet. The real puppet wasn't built yet, so they have just like a little Muppet boy stand-in. And I did an audition with Stacy, who plays Julia. This was like one of my first or second auditions for Sesame. So really, I wasn't as concerned about getting the role. I was just happy to be a part of the process and to see how it worked. So that I was like, oh, I probably won't get this character, but now I know this is what it's like. So then when another opportunity comes up, I'll be prepared. I'm a huge, I don't have that much raw talent, but I do work hard. and I do love preparing. So that's like been the way that I've found any success. And then sure enough, I got, you get the call and they're like, yeah, we'd love you to play Sam. And it's a huge honor and a huge responsibility. And as we've been him for 2 or 3 years now, and every little scene and sketch and song, I feel like I get to learn a little bit more about him and throw him against another character and see how they act. He like works really. I love Carmen to death, and he works really well with Rosita and Wes is Bradley. Bradley plays Wes, this new character at Sesame, and
Yep.
and Sam and Wes. Wes is, I think, like half Sam's age, but the two of them just become like huge trouble. Really like mischievous little guys who love each other. So it's like so much fun. Anytime I get to do a Sam thing, I'm just in heaven. It's a blast.
With what you were talking about Sesame Street's impact, for any of the listeners who are not aware, unless you saw that little clip at the start of the video and are wondering who's Lloyd Morissette, let's just say, without Lloyd Morissette, Sesame Street would not have existed. With Joan Gans Cooney, the two of them basically, they created the idea for the fact that they were going to do a children's educational TV show. They didn't really have much involvement in Sesame Street per se. They just knew that they were going to do a show to teach kids. So, and Lloyd Morissette just recently passed away. Spencer, did you get to know Lloyd at all?
Not personally. He would be every once in a while he would come around. I got to be a part of the Kennedy Center honors. And Lloyd was there to be recognized, which was very cool. And then I recall maybe for the 50th anniversary, he may have been on set for that, I think.
The special?
But the special.
Okay.
But unfortunately, no, I didn't get a lot of time. I have gotten to know and befriend a number of some of the early producers, writers, people who are instrumental in creating the show. And I know that it's a huge loss for our Sesame community with Lloyd. So
yeah,
what an impact on the world.
Yeah, he was a genius. He was an absolute genius. Mm-hmm. Talking about talking about legends with Sesame Street. couple weeks ago, maybe about before Christmas, as I'm sure you probably know, we lost another one of Sesame Street's legends and somebody who I
Mm,
actually knew,
mm.
Bob McGrath.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really hard. Bob was just so he just oozes charm and
yeah,
grace, and whether you're working with him or you're just meeting him at an event or something, he gave time to everyone. And if you came up to him and you're like, "Oh, Bob, it's so nice to meet you. I grew up with you in my living room," he was so kind and generous and engaged. He loved meeting people and hearing about the how the show impacted them. Had the voice of an angel. He had great comedy chops. He was just truly like a Renaissance man. Um, yeah, really sad to miss Bob.
yeah.
Yeah,
He and Emilio Delgado, who of course we
yeah.
also lost not too long ago. They were two of the nicest people from Sesame Street that I ever knew. Especially, I was more closer with Emilio. But I gotta tell you, like he and Bob too, they always seemed interested to know what I was up to, which always made me smile when I heard from them.
That's genuine. You can't really fake that. Like they really cared. And they cared about the fans and the supporters and people like you and I who are diehards for the show. They went the extra mile. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we missed it. It was a rough year for that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
saw on your social media, because of course I follow you on social media, which is how I found you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that sounds kind of creepy, but
No.
that's
You're
that's
good.
the
You're
way it
good.
is. Yeah.
This is what it's
Um,
for, right? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. But I saw on your social media that before you started at Sesame Street, you got the chance to meet Carol Spinney.
Yeah. He did a lovely performance kind of presentation talk at, if I remember rightly, it was at a regional Puppeteers of America festival at UConn. And this was I think I was in high school and wanted to go to UConn to be a part of their puppetry program. And so yeah, so he did a chat that night with him and Oscar. I think Pam was there with Gwangetta too, and I got a chance to talk to him after the performance and pick his brain and ask him about what next step should I be taking, what should I be working on, how do I get to Sesame Street, and he was um, just the best, just really sweet and lovely, and took a picture with me. I've got this great picture with Oscar the Grouch strangling me,
Yeah, I saw that on
and
Instagram.
yeah, it's really one of my favorite positions. And then fast forward to my very first day working on the show, working on Sesame Street this season. Carol was there, and I'm in the green room, and I'm just sitting there kind of silently, like overwhelmed. I don't want to, make waves. And Carol walks in and goes, "Oh, you're new. Who are you?" I said, "Oh yeah, I'm Mr. Spinney. I'm very new. It's my first day." He asked me, about where I came from, and was doing my own puppet thing, and then designing puppets and building and performing and stuff. And he told me that his start, and he was charging a nickel for his performances, and then they call him, Carol the set, Carol the set. They call him out of the green room, and he stands up and he goes, "Well, Spencer, welcome to the Muppets." And then he walks out of
Oh,
the room.
nice.
And I was just like, well, I can die now. This was just, I think I've done it. I've peaked. And there's a million of the stories, right? He touched the lives of so many um, young puppeteers, artists, writers, everyone on the show. Like he's talk about impact and legend.
Mm.
Like Carol's the real deal.
Yeah. I had that same feeling that you had around Carol when I was in the same room as Dave Goles and Steve Whitmire when I went to LA for
Yes.
Dave was doing Gonzo and Steve was doing Rizzo and Kermit, and I'm like right close to the stage watching, and Eric was there, and
Yes.
Bill Beretta and Matt were there. But of course Dave and Steve at that time had been there the longest, so it was
Oh
quite
yeah.
amazing for me. And a couple of years later, actually last year, I met Steve finally. I've never met
Oh,
Dave yet, but I've met
amazing.
Steve. Very nice man. Very, very
Amazing.
nice
Yeah,
man.
they're I mean they're so sweet, right? I got to work with Dave just recently for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade.
Oh,
They
nice.
did Uncle Traveling Matt was doing they did this great kind of crossover with the parade and with Fraggle Rock, with the Back to the Rock, the Apple Plus show that Johnny T made. And
Yep.
Dave Goles is there doing Traveling Matt, and I got a call to be his assist, and it was just, oh, I mean, he's the best. He's the best. And the way he, I think, like, you don't really understand how, I think or at least we don't do a good job of talking about what it all entails, about how creative you have to be and how many different hats you have to wear. And Dave is talking to the DP about, oh, well, the camera should come from this side, and he's talking to the director about, well, the marching band, we should hold them kind of back for this line. And he's got a vision, and he's been doing it for decades, and he knows what's going to work on camera. And him and I had worked together, actually on the parade maybe 6 or 7 years ago when the Muppets opened up the Macy's Day Parade. I got to work on that.
Oh,
And
nice.
he was just so sweet, and was curious about me and my journey and what kind of projects I was working on and what I wanted to do. And these people,
And
there's a reason
Steve
that
is a
they are
lot
where
like
they
that
are.
too. Steve Whitmire is so much
Yeah,
like that as well.
yeah. The times that I've been in the room with Steve, I've got the same vibe. I think you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Talking about celebrities in our minds, like Dave and Steve and Fran Brill, Carol Spinney. Do you have any celebrity stories from Sesame Street? Not just the puppeteers, but like guests that have appeared on the show?
Oh, let's see. What are some of my favorite people that we've gotten to work with? I mean, um, who comes to mind? We had a Keegan Michael Key was on a couple of years ago, and that was just like, he was such a fan and was so excited. And this is true for a lot of celebrities who come through. It's kind of Sesame Street is an equalizer. These are very talented people who get to do a lot of fun things, but when they show up on Sesame Street and they're like, wait a minute, that's Oscar's trash can. They get to become a kid again, and it's a lot of fun. So Keegan Michael Key was a blast, and he like really got the tone and the energy of like, he could kind of go toe to toe with the Muppets, which is always really fun. We get to work with crazy people. We get to work with like so many amazing celebrities. I will. One of my favorite moments that a lot of the other puppeteers will always jab me about is we're doing the Kennedy Center honors, and we're there on stage, and we're with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Lucy Liu and Cedric the Entertainer and all these like amazing, talented people. And we're doing rehearsal before the taping. It's either like the day before, that morning, or something. And because Sesame's been going so long, there's so many people who have been in and out, and we're backstage for for the rehearsal, and the stage manager was like, oh yeah, I worked at Sesame Street from 1982 to 94, and the lighting designer was like, oh yeah, I was at Sesame Street from 79 to 82. I got fired, and then I was back in 86. And like all these people, it's such a small world in production, and crew members, grips, all these people who have worked on the show. And so we practice, we rehearse our number on stage, and somebody says, hey, if you've ever worked on Sesame Street, why don't you come on stage and we'll do a big group picture all together. And so everybody comes up there, and Matt's in the Big Bird's there, and we're all there, and everybody's like, we're all like about to pose for this photo on stage, and I hear Spencer, and everybody kind of looks, and it's Tom Hanks, and Tom comes like busting across the stage in the middle of the photo. It's like, hey, how are you, man? Good to see you. Congratulations. How are you? And the other, and granted, I'm right-handing for Ernie. I'm Ernie's right hand. It's like doesn't get lower on the totem pole as in terms of like my role. I'm just a lowly assistant. I know my place. I'm not any of these main characters. And Tom's like, what are we doing? Why are we all standing here for? Oh, we're taking a Sesame Street photo. He goes, perfect, I'll be in it. So they take the photo. It's like Big Bird's on one side and Tom Hanks on the other. And the other Muppet performers, like David Rudman, could not believe that Tom Hanks was like, just wanted to talk to me. So that was like a very surreal, very fun moment. And we get so many of those. We get to talk with really smart musicians and dancers and actors, and these people are so talented. And when you get to see it up close, it's really fun.
That's funny that Tom Hanks wanted to be a part of that. But talking about Tom Hanks, actually, I did want to wrap it up by talking about Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Oh yeah.
Which very sadly I did not get to see in the theater, but I think.
Well, this is perfect, James. So
I was in college.
I'll just talk you through. Picture this: we open. Riding a bus. No, I'm joking.
I was in college at the time, and at that point this was just before the pandemic. At that point, we were doing solo projects, and even if you were working in groups, you still had to do your own solo projects. So I found myself way too busy to go to the movies, and then a friggin' pandemic happened. But I am looking forward to watching it. It's on my list of things to watch.
Oh, good. I always tell people it's like an indie movie that Tom Hanks is hiding inside.
So what was it like to be a part of that? And with a legend too, like a real actor, Tom Hanks.
Yes, that's so true.
But by which I mean, like, he knows how, like, if it's a funny movie, he knows to be funny. If it's a serious movie, well, he's not going to improvise. He's going to do what the script does.
He's done it a few times. That's true. I mean, that movie was magical for so many reasons. My family has a like kind of a close connection to Fred Rogers, and so to be a part of it was magical. We got hired just to design the puppets and recreate them, and so we got to go to the Fred Rogers archive, and the archivist took the glass out of the exhibit, and we got to handle like the original Daniel Tiger and King Friday and look at all those puppets and see how they're made, so that we could try to recreate them as authentically as possible. And then, production's like, oh, well, I guess we need puppeteers to run these puppets. So then be in it, and got to work with the casting director to bring in other talented puppeteers. And there's no better feeling than when you get to hire your talented friends and bring them in for a project. That's really exciting. And then the director, Mariel Heller, is just brilliant. She is truly like so talented, and the way she ran the whole set felt like it was very much in the legacy of Fred Rogers. The way that people talked to each other, treating each other. We were shooting in Pittsburgh on the original soundstage.
Oh wow!
Where they shot the show. Oh yeah, I mean, this thing was magical. And so people would his producers who worked with him for decades would come into the room. They'd say, oh, it smells like it did when we were taping. It was just the amount of care and love in that movie was really, really, really profound. So it was a dream. I got, it's Tom Hanks, Matthew Rhys, Chris Cooper, Susan Kalichi Watson. Like, we got to work with so many brilliant people. And similar to Sesame Street, people wanted to be there. It's like there's some moments in the script that are really lovely and touching, and a great reminder for a polarized world that we find ourselves in. So it was just it was the best. It was the absolute best. I'm super proud of it. I'm proud of how the puppets looked. I'm proud of our performances, and it's I'm very, very, very proud of that movie.
And now they've got that new series on PBS Kids. That's a Mister Rogers spinoff, Donkey Hody.
Yes, I love Donkey. I love all the people.
Me Haley too.
Jenkins yeah, superstar.
Yeah, quite a few friends of ours. Haley Jenkins, who oh, by the way, Haley, if you're listening, happy belated birthday.
That's a deep cut for you there, Jenkins.
No, she's one of my favorite people at Muppets to communicate with. She's so sweet, and a couple other friends of ours that are on that show. Tao, I think Tao. Yeah,
Yes.
Peter and
Yeah.
Leslie and Stephanie, Frankie. Yeah, just and they really do
So
a
many
really,
people.
really good job on this show. I'm really loving it. I may be a little bit older for its audience, but I do love the show.
Well, I mean, and that speaks to, I think, artistically, it's really smart, right? The way that they shoot puppet. I mean, it's Redman, right? It's spiffy. So
Yeah, yeah.
David and Adam know so much, and they're so good the way they work, and the way that those puppets fill the frame and use the frame. It's not just talking heads. It's not just bottom third. Like they are really making some really strong, exciting choices. The puppetry is good. The characters are interesting. It's like
Oh yeah.
some new voices that we haven't heard. Yeah, that show is so charming. It's great.
It really is. Yeah. Even my mom agrees.
Well, you've heard it here. James' mom, Spencer, and James all agree. Don Quixote, two hooves, way up.
Two hoops way up. Yeah, exactly. Well, Spencer, thank you for joining me today. Is there anything you want to say to finish?
No. Thanks so much, James. It's a pleasure. I always love nerding out with a fellow puppet person. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Well, you've come to the right place, and you listeners as well have come to the right place. So in the meantime, I will see you on the. I've got a couple of nostalgia talk stuff lined up. Some things that I got to keep quiet about, but I will see you then. Peace.